So now we're going to talk about how to make the visitation transfer and why you should make the visitation transfer short, efficient, and unmemorable.
I love that list.
All right, that's the goal we're going for. So, Linda, why is it good to keep the transfer short?
The longer you make it, and this works for lots of situations with children, by the way, taking them to a therapist's office, taking them into school, first few days of school, whatever elementary age they are. Just, if you linger, if you ask them things like, are you going to be okay?
Right.
They're not. Suddenly they're going to start crying. So, and I like to bring those other things in because sometimes parents think that's just about, once again, transferring to the other parent. When it's any time that you're belaboring the dropping off thing.
Right. And I call that the long goodbye. So don't do the long goodbye. In fact, what I'd like for folks to do is to do their goodbyes before they get in the car.
Yes.
To go to the transfer location.
Give the hugs and
all of that stuff. Yeah. Because that lets everybody, not just the kids, but you also, understand that once you get in the car, the transfer is already underway.
Oh, I like that.
Yep. So you do your goodbyes at your house, then you get in the car. Everything's fun and happy and light. There shouldn't be any argumentation. There shouldn't be any, crying, no giving a list of things to do while you're at the other parent's house. Nothing in the car except, hey, let's listen to a fun song, or, man, it's going to be so much fun at your other parent's house. So no long goodbyes, and goodbyes before you get in the car.
Yes. And the other reason for that is a lot of children have told me that they're anxious about hugging. This just blows my mind. They're actually anxious about hugging the parent they're leaving in the sight of the other parent.
That's so sad.
Isn't that awful?
Yeah.
They really are afraid to show love, affection for that parent.
And that goes with our principle in our Coparent Academy course, that every child deserves to love and be loved by both parents without fear.
Right.
So, and that's something, if they feel that way, that's something that they're anxious about probably multiple times a week.
Oh, totally.
And think about how that builds up on your kid, to have them have that kind of conflict inside of them multiple times per week.
And so that's why, if you get those hugs done, as you're getting in the car, to go, then, and you don't belabor that as well, kids going to be, especially if they're on up about, third, fourth, fifth grade, somewhere around in there, they're going to be really glad that they don't have to do that in front of the other parent.
That's a great point. And then we talk about making the transfers efficient. And so the visitation transfer is just that. It is transferring the child from one parent to the other. Here's what it's not. It's not an accounting session to determine what the arrearage is and what the current payment schedule is to get the person caught up. And it's not the time to send over negotiation messages, right? Settlement offers for the overall case. It's not the time to do all of that stuff.
No.
But the parents often will think, I've got them right here. I don't have to pay my lawyer to send this through my lawyer. It's going to save me money if I can just have that conversation right now.
Right.
So, but that's not what it's about. Remember that the visitation transfer is to transfer the child and nothing else. Right. And so if you make it efficient, you're not adding all that additional stuff onto it. Now, when your child is younger, you are going to have some things that need to be transferred. So, for example, there will be a log potentially if you're keeping a handwritten parenting log that shows when the child is eaten or their last bowel movement, or if they're on medication, when the last time they took the medication, what the dosage was, things like that.
Or if they're in school, elementary age in school or something, the homework or some handout that came home on Friday in their book bag or something, that
right.
You want to make sure the other parent gets to see.
Right, if you're doing it in paper. I mean, I'm still a big fan now that everybody has cell phones that can take a picture and send a text message.
Definitely.
My preference is if you get that piece of paper, you immediately, the first time you're seeing it, as soon as you're seeing it, you take a picture of it and you text it, or you use your parenting app to send it to your co-parent. So try to keep it efficient by only making about what it really is, the transfer of your child and the things that your child immediately needs
Right.
during that visitation period. So those two are pretty simple, the idea to keep it short and efficient. Here's where so much comes in, and we could tell stories about this next category for days. Try to make the visitation transfer unmemorable.
Ooh.
There's so many stories. I'll start with an easy. An easy way to make the transfer memorable is to do it at the police station.
Oh, my goodness.
How do kids feel about visitation transfers at police stations?
It goes from a child who's afraid they're going to get arrested themselves to because they're already, for some reason, afraid of policemen, to a child that is afraid one of their parents is going to get arrested, to a child that has heard from one of the parents that there have been allegations of some kind of harm with one of the parents to the other,
Right.
even in a police station parking lot.
Right?
Maybe they have had to go into the police station after the transfer, so that parent that's receiving them can tell on the other parent for something they did wrong.
Right?
And it just goes on and on. They at least will assume that there's some danger afoot because they're in a police station.
Well, how could you not?
Right.
I mean, as an adult, how many times do we go to a police station? It's hard. I can count on maybe one hand and possibly three fingers the number of times I've been to a police station as an adult in just sort of my daily life, not as an attorney working a case, but as like an adult human living my life. I have very little reason to ever be at a police station.
Right at the moment, I'm even trying to remember where they are in Tulsa.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And you shouldn't know, right? Why know? The reason it makes it memorable, for all the reasons that Linda said, it invites this scary authority into the transfer, and kids, they spend their life under all sorts of authority.
Right.
And one of the things I think it does for kids of a certain age too is it makes them trust less each parent. Because why are we adding in this other authority?
Wow.
Why can't I trust my mom and my dad? Is one of them untrustworthy?
Right.
I mean, I don't know. That's the way
Whether it's, and that goes for if you're in the police station parking lot or if you are calling the police on the other parent.
Right.
Wow.
And then
Very good point.
also, how do the kids find out? This is also a big issue for me. I've done many depositions and many trials and where visitation transfers started happening unilaterally all of a sudden at a police station, where one parent decided unilaterally they're going to be at the police station now and just texted or called, emailed the other parent and said, we're going to be meeting at the police station now. I have that situation.
Would be a red flag way high all of a sudden.
I have that situation a few times a year. That happens.
Wow.
And so one of the questions that I routinely ask when that occurs to the parent who unilaterally made the decision and communicated it to the other parent is, were your children surprised when all of a sudden you were exchanging in a police station if the child's old enough to know? And uniformly, the answer is, well, no. I mean, I told them in advance we're going to be meeting at the police station. And then that leads to all sorts of questions.
Sure.
Well, when did you tell them? How did you tell them? What did you tell them? What was their response? How did you respond to their response? Did you inform the other parent that you were going to be explaining to the children why you were meeting at a police station? And did you come up with an agreed upon reason that you were going to give the child?
That doesn't make the other parent look bad.
Right. So there are just so many things that are wrapped up with a unilateral decision to meet at a police station. I don't think it's good to ever meet at a police station.
Right.
But if you do it unilaterally, it invites in so many other problems.
Right.
So what are some other ways in which parents make visitation transfers memorable?
Well, it doesn't have to be at a police station for interesting things to happen. And we have a particular group therapy place in town that they do individual therapy, but they're a big group. And they have a government grant to see trauma-related situations with children, such as PTSD kind of thing with a kid. And there have been many transfer situations that I've actually even read the file that the trauma that the therapist has labeled PTSD was as simple as just the visitation transfer one time.
Wow. So I guess it is possible for there to be PTSD resulting from a single, extremely memorable visitation transfer.
Yes, I would think it would be if the child or they observed one of the parents badly hurting each other.
Right.
One of the ones I got the file on two boys that were like 6 and 8 when this happened. The dad had picked up the boys' suitcases to take them to his car, and the boys were still in the mother's car, and the mother said something he didn't like, and he just threw the suitcases to the ground. Just, didn't throw them at her. Didn't kids weren't even supposedly listening to any of this. And that was the extent of the trauma. Mm. And he shouldn't have thrown a little temper tantrum there. And that's also because the parents were face to face, probably in a situation that they might not should have been that way.
Right.
But, then the children were afraid to go with dad. And then they spent 2 years and 3 different therapists apiece, because they rotate the therapists in and out of the agency I'm talking about. And so 6 therapists involved with the PTSD of one small incident in the parking lot.
Yeah. And probably, because this is how they seem to do things, they revisit the trauma each week.
Yes.
And so it grows and snowballs. And the fact that you're revisiting something so often, I think would have to give a child the perception that it was important.
Yes. It was a really big problem.
Right. So one of the worst situations that I've seen that didn't involve violence, because their visitation transfers where violence ensues sometimes. Those were horrible situations, and those are kind of no-brainers that was memorable. One of the ones that I saw in the last couple of years was there was the father who had been accused of alcohol issues but did not have any and was cleared of that. And then mother. Mother is doing a visitation exchange with father at a Quick Trip. And it's for an evening visitation with one of the children. There was an infant who was being transferred and older kids. So mother was dropping the infant off to father. Father receives the infant. Mother, and he's going to bring the child back 2 hours later, right? So the visit starts. He's got the kid for about 2 hours. He's coming back to Quick Trip to drop the child off. Mother has 2 older kids that she's had the whole time because father was getting visits with the infant to try to build up that relationship. So mother calls 911 and says, the father of my infant is having visitation. I had the exchange with him a couple hours ago, and I smelled alcohol on his breath. So I'm afraid that he has been drinking. He's going to be at this place at this time. Could you please send an officer? So dad comes with the child back for the drop-off.
Has no idea what he's walking into.
Right. A police officer approaches him and says, I understand there's a chance you may have been drinking. Do you mind talking with me for a second? And the father just kind of laughs it off and says, sure, I'll talk with you. And the officer quickly says, is this a custody situation? He's like, sure is. He's like, okay. And says, you're fine. You're good to go. Because he can tell he's no intoxication. Mother, here's the even worse. So it's already bad enough that, and at the deposition, it was very interesting, the thought process that went behind this for mother. I won't get into it. But what's really interesting is she allegedly thought that he was intoxicated when he picked up the infant, but didn't call 911 until the exchange 2 hours later.
Right.
Okay. she brings the two older children with her unnecessarily to the visitation transfer to pick up the infant and parks so that she can see father and the children, and she can see the police officer approaching father.
Oh, no.
So in her mind, I think what was happening was she thought she was setting it up so the kids would see father arrested.
I was about to say that, yeah.
So can you imagine?
Wow.
Now, if he had been drinking, then that would have been at least partially on him, but it still would have been on mom for putting the children in the position to see that kind of thing. And that's an example of sort of power politics and strategic dynamics that can go on at a visitation transfer. That in that case, I think it was really Machiavellian. And so parents will sometimes take the opportunity of a visitation transfer to set up a situation that they then will want to take advantage of, and either intentionally are putting their children in the position of observing it or don't care that they're going to observe it. I mean, that just is beyond the pale.
Right. Oh, yeah. I've seen situations where the one parent will take the kids even out of bed when they figure out that the other parent is at a hotel or a motel with a new significant other. And just so they can watch that parent come out of the motel with that person.
Yeah. So that just shows you that sometimes people, and we're all susceptible to this, but we can get so wrapped up in our own narrative about what's fair to us or what we deserve or whatever, that we stop thinking about what's best for our children. And I think that's taking a visitation transfer and turning it into a power play, turning it into a situation in which you're going to try to develop evidence for your case is an example of making the visitation transfer inefficient because you're doing it for something other than what it's supposed to be, and potentially memorable for your child in a way that will cause trauma.
Right. Right.
And then,
at least, like you said, lessen their trust for one or both of you.
Right. And that's what people don't understand. This stuff almost always boomerangs.
Right.
If you do this, if you make a visitation transfer uncomfortable for your child and you think you're justified because of, X, Y, and Z, they're going to hold it against you eventually as soon as they're old enough to understand what's going on. So making it memorable may not work out for you in the long run because your kid's memory may be that you're a jerk. And that's not what you want, I would think.
Right. Exactly.
So
I wonder what those kids thought when Dad didn't get arrested.
I don't know. I
Dad
think
and the officer shook hands and everything was fine at the end.
I think they, because I don't know, but I don't think she told them what to expect. So being in small town Oklahoma, I think they probably just figured they knew each other.
Oh, okay.
So I think it was okay. But if he had been, or if the officer, thought he smelled something too, because sometimes when you suggest something to somebody, they smell it as well.
Or might have gone through the test, just to make sure.
Right. So there's lots of ways in which that could have gone wrong. But this, to follow up and sort of close the loop on this, we want to try to keep the visitation transfer short, efficient, and unmemorable. This should be about one thing. You're delivering a package. You're delivering your child. Does the Amazon worker spend a lot of time talking about other stuff when they're dropping off their package? No. They drop it off, they ring the doorbell, and they're gone. Visitation transfer should be like that.
They're pleasant.
And they're usually pleasant. Yeah, exactly. They're usually pleasant. So be as efficient as an Amazon delivery person dropping off your package. Just don't throw them over the fence like sometimes they do.
Oh, yeah, they do. Yeah.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to leave questions, comments, or concerns, please email podcast@coparentacademy.com. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen.